The anime begins with the launch of a space rocket where a dog was being taken into space. This was the first time humanity had sent a living being into space on Earth while a beautiful vampire girl was looking at the moon. They wanted to get a human into space before the other nations, and in anticipation we see a boy named Levi training to skydive. Love and the other soldiers went back to the barracks. My boss wanted to talk to him, so he went to see him. The chief says that he has a good grade, but he was demoted to reservist, and just to be a candidate to go into space would be almost zero. His boss wanted to use his intelligence for a secret project. This project would be to take the first man into space by making a live transmission, but they were very afraid that this human would die in the middle of the mission and make it a fiasco. They were doing experiments so that they would not die. In the experiment room, Levi asks if he would do their part. The doctor says that he is not an experiment and the guinea pig they are using is a vampire. But is this really a truth or just a lie from the doctor? The doctor takes him to a room where there is a coffin. He opens it and a beautiful girl appears. Levi is shy by her gaze. The doctor says that Levi's mission would be to train and monitor her. 1 week before the launching, and during this time his identity would be Neve to the civilians, and from now on he would live with her. Neve's health manager comes to explain what Neve's training routine would be like. She would have to train during the night because during the day vampires are very weak. Levi wonders if she feeds on blood, but she eats normal food anyway. Levi decides to call her Darina, her real name. Neve would be very suspicious in town. He takes her to the cafeteria to meet the other candidates of the space research. He asks her to take off her hat, and they all get scared after seeing her, and a boy starts hunting her, calling her a monster. She calls him an idiot and says that's why she hates humans. Everyone leaves the dining hall and they start to eat. Neve watches and gets embarrassed as soon as she notices, as night falls, while they are walking back he must stop by a church, and when he notices that there is a cross he doesn't try to protect it. Darina says that this was invented by humans. She then sees a statue and asks what it was for. Levi says it is the tomb of the dog that went into space. Levi explains that the regime forced them to send the puppy into space, and during the launch, as soon as it went into orbit, the dog ended up dying because of the extreme heat. Levi asked him to warn only as a guinea pig, but he could not see Darina as something irrelevant like that. Back at the lab, Neve goes to Darina's cell, offering a blanket. She says that she is resistant to the cold. Levi then apologizes for the cafeteria and for treating her like an experiment and leaves. When she comes out of the coffin, she notices that he has left it on the table and decides to act more carefully, as humans cannot be trusted. The next night Levi goes to pick up Darina to begin her training. They were to do 12 laps on an Olympic track. Darina begins to run very fast. Levi increases his pace so that she doesn't finish in front of him. During this he feels a crushing pressure on his back, and before he knows it he has already finished the 12 laps. Darina doesn't like being behind a human one bit. They go to Dr. N's office for some physical examinations. Darina lovingly asks Levi to leave the room so she can take his measurements. After that they go to eat space food as part of their training. Levi asks if vampires suck blood. Darina says that this is forbidden, as it is an act of savagery. She says that she drank only once on her 10th birthday. It was a ritual done by the vampires. She says it was very good. Soon after they go to a capsule to train their resistance to heat. One of the doctors who would take care of this training arrives and asks Levi to learn. He chains and binds his mouth. He must, and starts the training at 90 degrees and finishes it without any problem. Darina enters the capsule and with great effort manages to finish the test. The next training session would be in the centrifuge. The centrifuge simulates a rocket taking off, where the weight of the passengers multiplies of times. After Levi finishes it, Darina enters the machine and the man puts his speed too high, which ends up hurting him. The next night, they go to swimming practice. Darina was performing amazingly well in all her training. They go to skydiving practice. Darina is very afraid of heights, so Levi gives her a little push to help her. She gets very irritated and they decide to stop there. During her bath, Darina starts to have bad visions about jumping and parachuting. When she returns to her room, Levi has left a glass of sparkling water and lemon for her to drink. She finds it very tasty. He brags about his drink out the window. She calls him a pervert and asks him to stop spying. Days later, a secret government meeting was taking place and they were talking about her being ready for her test flight. One of the politicians skiing Neve is to be executed after the mission. The leader says that there is still time to decide about this. Back at the barracks, the other candidates were younger Levi for him to take care of a monster. In the Anya room, they find out that Darina was losing weight because of her training and would have to change her menu to stop this from happening. Ain, the question they could call Iri Meow. Darina asks if she isn't afraid of her. Anya says that she is very cute and there is no way she could be afraid of that. In a bar, he was studying about the fear of animal height. He wanted to help Darina to lose her fear. In case she is a failure, she would be executed by the government, and he wanted to solve her problem. He goes to get her. Levi decided to take her flying. Darina was very scared, and when they took off, he asks her to open her eyes. She watches the beautiful one in front of her and totally forgot about her fear. She could only smile. After staying in the sky for a while, they decide to come down, and when they are on the ground, several military cars carrying bags of blood pass by. A missile accident had happened and more than 500 people were killed. But it was covered up and they announced it as a plane crash to the public. Back at Darina's skydiving training, she was having trouble just landing. She ended up injuring her nose on landing. While they were resting, Darina asks him why a missile would explode on a space base. Mus tells Darina about his teacher who was taken to prison for saying that the saw are made to cross the sky and not kill people. The next night, Levi decided to take his skydiving training more seriously. They were about to miss from a helicopter. They jump and Darina is very distressed until they land. During the high-temperature training, Levi and talking with Franz and wondering why Darina had applied for Levi to be careful as it may create feelings for the guinea pig inside the capsule. She recalls the moment she applied to go to the moon. She was willing to do anything to go to the moon. Days later, the government postponed Neve's launch to December 12. Levi says that she is ready by the due date. Neve then begins to teach Darina step by step about the mission. After her ship returns to the Earth's atmosphere, she will be injected outward and will have to land by parachute. She has 3 weeks to learn to land on her own. The spacesuit was ready. It was brought for her to wear for training. After getting out of it, she was very sweaty, and because Levi was watching, she was embarrassed. Later, a girl asked Levi if he wasn't annoyed that a vampire was going into space before them. Darina then left the room and said that if she has something to say, let her say it to her face. The girl says she will never accept it. The girl asks Levi to be careful because she can suck his blood. Levi says to go in, that is arrogant just like that and don't care about that. But late but eat. Darina asks Levi what she thinks of her. Levi says he thinks she is very polite, that he was forced to do that. Darina says she was not forced but volunteered. He asks why, but she didn't want to answer. Winter has begun and she was going to do a new training in an anechoic chamber at high altitude with high oxygen levels and low atmospheric pressure. You can't hear anything from the outside. She would be stuck inside for a few days. Levi says she should have some fun before that. She asks him where he likes to go. He says he likes to go to a jazz bar. She asks him to lift her up once and walks awkwardly into her coffin. Hours pass and they go to the bar. He orders a drink, and he watches and sips his soda water. She then looks at his drink and asks what it was. He offers her a sip. As soon as she drinks it, she starts to feel a burning sensation on her tongue. The alcohol quickly takes effect and she even falls off her chair. Darina asks him when he started wanting to go into space. He says that when he was 5 years old he saw a plane in front of the moon, and he felt that he wanted to go to the moon, and that probably the cosmonauts in the UK feel that way. Natalia, the snacks aunt, shows up. She tells him to be careful talking aloud about the UK. She leaves and they decide to go rollerblading. They get their ice skates from an acquaintance and go to an icy lake. Darina starts skating and Levi is dazzled by it. After skating, Darina asks him why can't he go into space. He says that he was aggressive with his superior because he was stepping on his son's face after firing him. Darina says that her family ended up participating in the war and some of her relatives were burned in it, that vampires are known as the moon people, and so she wants to go to space at any cost. She wanted to see the moon before a human, because she believes that when a human sees the moon it will be dirty. Levi and says that he will support and help until that day comes. The next night, His training in the isolated chamber began. But Levi was talking to his superiors about Darina. He asked them what would happen after the experiment. His superior tells him not to worry about a guinea pig. Inside the isolated chamber, Darina recalled her sad past with her parents being burned by soldiers in the war. After 13 days pass, Levi and opened the door and she is again to her a glass of sparkling water in lemon was very happy to see her again. They then return to their skydiving training, now only 10 days left to launch. During the high temperature training, Franz asks if he likes her, says that their relationship was only. Franz also warns that he will be transferred. And there will be no more, back to skydiving. He was not going to mug her alone, without being attached. Levi, while they were coming down, he decides to hold her hands. She gets shy and he muggles, asking to open her parachute. She managed to land very well, Levi, and went running to hug her, but she didn't want to be. Giri doesn't thank her, because even though she is treated like an object by others, he wants to save her. That's why he taught her skydiving. She says he is the only human who doesn't consider him evil. Suddenly they come across a meteorite. They decide to see where it fell. When they got there, there was a capsule from the test rocket and the dog that was inside was dead. Darina started to have a bad time after she saw the dog. Now there are 8 days until a launch. Will our vampire be able to go into space?